Eleanor, because she's already, you see her interacting, she takes my mobile device and she's looking through pictures and, you have to teach kids, not at Eleanor's age, but a little bit older, like, don't believe everything you read online. That there's, if we agree that the internet is going to be central to everything that we do as a society, we need to be teaching those skills to our kids in school. It's just as important as look both ways before you cross the road, even more so. And we're starting to see that happening, but not to the extent that we need to do. And it has to be taught in the schools. Obviously, we have a pretty well-developed child safety program that I think we're doing it. Are we doing it here, Ben? So Ben, who's a colleague of mine, tomorrow morning is sitting down with a group of 40 or 50 educators to talk about how to teach these skills to students and to kids especially, because it is going to be central to everything that we're doing. It's just not being done in the way that it should be today.
I think we had a student over here.
Hi. My question has to do with the PRISM accusations. And Google denied that it gave open access to its servers to the government. And it gave no direct or indirect or backdoor access or Dropbox, as your vice president said. However, my question is, you referred to complying or not complying with government requests. How do you decide that? Is that on a case-by-case, situation? How do you, because the numbers probably are huge when it comes to the Chinese government asking, or the United States government asking for access to your server data. So how do you really make a decision about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it depends on the country. In China, what very much at the heart of that was this decision, like we were getting this incredible number of requests. We were increasingly uncomfortable with the nature of these requests, and then ultimately we couldn't see any way forward other than to just leave. But I don't want you to think that this is just a problem that happens in China. I mean, we got a request from a sheriff in the Midwest who didn't like something written about him online, and he sent us an order saying, take it down. There's no automated process to this thing. We spend an incredible amount of resources. We have lawyers at the company who do nothing but look at these requests, both in the spirit and the letter of the law. They push back on a lot of them. Sometimes we say, no, you're going to have to take us to court if you really want us to do this. And I'm actually really proud of that, because believe me, it would be a hell of a lot easier for us to just say yes to everything. But in the long run, we just don't think that's what our responsibility is. And as I said, the transparency report that we publish is really a very powerful tool in talking to governments about this. It's really surprising the extent to which governments do not want themselves to be called out on that transparency list, because they're looking for FDI, they're looking for American companies to invest, they're looking for that sort of economic growth, and it tells a very particular story about a country when you see huge numbers of government requests. But again, we list all those requests, and we also list the numbers we comply with and the ones that we don't. And sometimes we just fight it out in court. And when a court decides, then we comply.
One of the things I'll say, I just pick up on what I said, is the problem here is, or one of the problems here is there's just very few rules to govern the situation. So, and the rules are different whether you're in the United States versus Ukraine. And so Google's in a tough position. It's got to make decisions with very little guidance to go on. So it will get easier. It's not getting easier very fast. That's for certain. And unless particularly, the United States legislatures, the federal and state legislators start addressing this directly, it's not going to get any easier very quickly. And then, we got to also remember that we're not the only country on the face of the planet. So, it's not going to get very easy very fast. It's not going to get easier very fast unless there's some international body that's going to set some rules for this. And I just don't know where that's coming. I don't see it coming down the road at all.
And I fear the day when we have an organization like the UN getting involved in this sort of thing, because that is a race to the bottom as far as I'm concerned. That's how you get the lowest common denominator. And I really feel like the United States, there's a reason why the internet was born here and grew here as quickly as it did. And it's because of the fundamental freedoms that we enjoy here. And the reality is because government kept its hands off the internet in the initial stages of its development. And that's why it's as big and robust as it is today. In every country where the government has said, hey, we're going to help you with this. We're going to treat this like I used to be a telecommunications regulator in California. You do not want telco regulators telling you how to build out your internet. Believe me, it's the last thing you want. You let the market do it, you let private enterprises do it, and you let government play a role when there's stuff online that that really shouldn't be there, like child abuse images, or you're stealing social security numbers or credit card numbers. Absolutely, take that stuff down. But I really fear, and the UN is trying very much to get into this game, by the way, and at the UN, it's one country, one vote. Okay? Yes. So imagine what the internet's going to look like if the UN says, we have jurisdiction over this. Cuba, you have the same vote as the United States does. Russia, and I'm going to get on a tangent too. Look at, in Africa, it's the most fascinating place in the world right now for the internet. Only 16% of Africans are online right now. But the Chinese government has a complete program of diplomatic outreach to that country, and they hold those votes in their pocket. And so you really have to be careful when you think about the UN or other international bodies getting involved in the internet.
And I think you're correct. The politics of countries wanting favors would not swing it in favor of a free and open society for the internet. And I think we have to really think about the politics behind why countries align with each other, what kind of favors they're looking for beyond just open and free information, whether it's for trading arms, whether it's for other things that happen in the world. That one country, one vote issue would be chaotic. And the question would be, how many of us would really want that to happen in a society that's already open and free with information? So we really have to think about, I support the UN on a number of things, but I'd have to agree in this situation, I would not like to see that one country, one vote.
I understand that the DEA and the FBI and so forth have to go to a judge and get a subpoena. Apparently, the NSA doesn't do that. How can you assure us that Google isn't rolling over and playing dead for the NSA?
So it's a great question, and in the wake of the Snowden revelations, there were a lot of questions, directed at Google and other technology companies about what are you doing, and we really had to explain very clearly, as you mentioned earlier, that we weren't providing direct access to our servers, first of all, which was an accusation made in the Snowden revelations, that we've never provided direct access. I don't care what you call it, back door, side door, Dropbox, whatever. We never provided direct access. And that we comply with only valid judicial orders. Now, the real heart of the problem with the Snowden revelations is the lack of transparency. Now, we couldn't even acknowledge under law that the program existed. And when the revelations came to light, we decided, well, that was ridiculous. We're going to at least defend ourselves, and we will break the law if we have to. And you can put our lawyers in jail or whatever you want to do. Like I'm not in the legal department, so whatever. Just kidding. No, but it's very hard because you're trying to prove a negative. No, we did not do that, but we didn't, and we comply with valid, judicially approved orders. And we sued the federal government for greater transparency, And we made some progress on that, but we haven't made enough. And we're spending a lot of time up on the Hill right now trying to get reform legislation through. Because unlike regular requests, we can only talk about these national security requests in bands. Like you can talk about you receive between 0 and 1,000 requests. That's not granular enough to give anyone a sense of what's going on. Google, we're not advocating for, we need to be telling everyone, if there's a valid national security request and it's a valid court with a true adversarial system where we actually get to go up before the FISA court and argue our case, that's fine. But as you said, that hasn't been the system. So we're trying to reform it. We're spending a lot of time and energy doing that. And, I think, people often ask, and I'm raising a really controversial question, what do you think of Edward Snowden? I don't have an opinion about Edward Snowden. I really don't. I think the debate that we're having right now is necessary and good. And it's one that we should have been having all along. And I'm glad that we're finally able to have it somewhat out in the open. Because as Charlotte said, transparency is really a key to all of this stuff.
Thank you. Let's have another student.
How you doing? I wanted to ask, Google was in the CNN in the UK, and they were talking about subscribers to the internet were saying that they were complaining to say that they didn't want their personal information on the internet. And I wanted to ask if somebody requests that their personal information be removed from the internet, what does Google do to remove their person's information from the internet?
Yeah. Well, let's define. A lot of people have different views or definitions of what personal information is. Okay. If we're talking about your social security number or credit card number, stuff that I think everyone in the room, I don't think anyone in the room would want their social security number, their credit card number online, right? That sort of stuff. There's a web form. You let us know about it. We take it down, and we usually take it down in a couple of hours. The more difficult question comes up in the case of, well, someone said that I'm a jerk, and I don't think that's right, and I don't want that information on there. We're not going to take that down. And the reason I bring that up is because I don't know if all of you are aware of the right to be forgotten, this controversy that's going on in Europe right now. That's the debate that's currently happening in Europe. The European Court of Justice ruled a couple months ago that an individual has the right to have information taken down about him or her from search engines, even if it's true. If it's, quote, irrelevant, no longer relevant, or I always forget the end of it. But, so there's this really very difficult debate going on in Europe right now about privacy rights and the right of the public to know certain information. And I don't want to get too deep into the gory details, but what we're struggling with right now are examples of government officials coming to us and saying, as a result of this ruling, I don't want those newspaper stories about the allegations of what I did when I was in office online anymore. Take them down. We have people who have been convicted of pretty heinous crimes like child abuse saying, I want that court record sealed. I don't want that being available online. Doctors who have been lawsuits for malpractice saying the same thing. So it's a really, if you want to talk about the really thorny issues about privacy and free expression and the right to know, it's taking place in Europe right now. It's a very real issue. And I don't know how that's going to turn out. It's going to take years for it to be played out. But I don't want people to feel like it's, the internet that we know and have come accustomed to knowing and enjoying is a given, because these issues are being debated all around the world right now, And that's why, it's honestly why I'm here tonight. I want people to get engaged, to care about it, to get involved, and to make sure that you're engaging with your, you've got the representatives of the congressional delegation here, speak up. Let's make sure that law enforcement has to get the same court order to get access to your email that they would to get access to a letter in your living room. That's not the case right now. It should be.
It's funny to think of the United States being behind on an internet issue, but we are behind. We're behind on the privacy debate because, unlike Europe, we don't have constitutional privacy in this country. It might come as a shock to non-lawyers, but there's no constitutional right to privacy in the United States, not really at least, unlike in Europe where privacy is constitutional, which is why they're having this debate. And we're behind countries like India that has a very robust data security law. I don't know why we're not having this discussion at high levels. For the past 4 or 5 federal legislative cycles, there's been a national data security law. It fails inevitably. I think people find it too boring to discuss or something. I can't figure out why we don't care about this at the national level. I can't, I can figure out a bit why we're having difficulty dealing with the privacy issue in the United States, because we have such diametrically opposed moral beliefs between freedom of expression and freedom of privacy. And it's hard to know where the United States is going to fall, but nonetheless, we still are not having the same debates. I don't know why, and I don't think we're going to fix the issue until we start having them at high levels, probably legislative levels.
I think we have time for one more student question.
Hi. So I have a question about the opt-in and the opt-out. In the U.S., we have to opt out of getting our information monitored within social media. But in Europe, they have to opt into it. So they have to click a box saying that they want their information to be tracked. I just want to see your viewpoints about the differences between privacy concerns for people in the U.S. versus people in Europe.
I'll start, then you can go down the line. This is going to sound a bit like a punt, but I don't care whether or not we have an opt-in or opt-out system as long as we choose one and people know what it is. People should be given both the knowledge of what information they can keep confidential or private and what they can't, and then the ability to choose. Doesn't matter what system as far as I'm concerned, as long as we choose one.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, from our perspective, I think, relates to marketing. If you come down to our website and you pull down a white paper, you have the right to know if we're going to keep emailing you after you get that white paper or not. And you should be able to choose whether or not you do that. And that's how we run our business. That's how most businesses are run, and it should be transparent. I agree. It doesn't matter which way. As long as you know as the consumer, I downloaded this white paper and I'm now agreeing to have you send me an email every day for the next 25 years. You need to know that.
I want to opt out.
I want to opt out. I'm out.
I would agree. I mean, I think it's a matter of choice, but you just want to know what the rules are. And as long as you know the rules, I think you can make good decisions.
We actually provide those tools to everyone who's signed in as a Google user, and the vast majority of people don't bother using them. Every Google user has the ability to, it's called the privacy dashboard. You can see exactly what sort of data is being collected when you use our services. With one button, you can erase it all, or you can export it out of Google services. Very few people use it. I mean, there is always this ongoing issue of making sure users know. And we try that, we struggle with that, and we also struggle to make our privacy policy as simple as possible within, and still have it be legal. We tried a couple of years ago to simplify our privacy policy. We got sued by 33 different data protection authorities around the world because we couldn't come up with one single privacy policy. So this stuff isn't easy. But I'm constantly shocked by the number of people who say that privacy is really important to me and how few people actually use the existing tools available to them. What is it called? It's the privacy dashboard on Google. If you're signed in on Google,